Thomas Harlow walked into the lawyer's office, and his boots made no sound on the wooden floor. He did not want to be there. He did not want to be anywhere. The room was cold. The walls were painted a dull color that made him think of death. There was one small window, and outside it, the sun was dying. It was late afternoon in the town of Dry Creek, a place so empty that tumbleweeds rolled down the main street without anyone to see them. The light coming through the window was orange and sad. It made everything look like it was burning, but slowly, without any heat. "Mr. Harlow," the lawyer said. His name was Mr. Price. He was a fat man with small eyes and a voice that sounded like it came from deep inside a cave. "Thank you for coming." Thomas did not answer. He sat down in the chair in front of the desk. The chair was hard and uncomfortable. Everything in his life was uncomfortable now. Nothing felt right anymore. Mr. Price opened the book. It was very old. The pages were yellow and thick. He looked at Thomas over his glasses. "Your uncle," Mr. Price said slowly, "has passed away. He died 3 weeks ago. There was no family to notify, so the town buried him." The funeral was simple. Thomas nodded. He had not known his uncle, not really. His uncle had disappeared into the desert 40 years ago, when Thomas was just a boy. No one in the family spoke about him. He was like a ghost, someone who had lived once, but now existed only in old stories. "Your uncle left a will," Mr. Price continued. He turned another page. The paper made a sound like a whisper. "He left everything to you. You are his only living relative." Thomas felt something inside his chest, a small spark of something. Maybe hope, maybe money, maybe something that could help him start again after everything had fallen apart. The lawyer paused. He took a long breath. This was not good news. Thomas could see it in the man's face. "Your uncle left you a piece of land," Mr. Price said. His voice was flat and empty. "The property is located 15 miles outside of town, near the old canyon. There is a cave on the land. That is all your uncle owned." Thomas waited. There had to be more. A house, money, something. "That is all," Mr. Price said. He closed the book slowly. "The land is not valuable, I am afraid. The ground is dry and dead. No water runs through it. The cave is empty. Many people have looked at the property. No one wants to buy it. Some people say the land is cursed." The words hit Thomas like a punch to the stomach. No house, no money, no help. He had nothing. Again, 3 months ago, his wife Mary had died. She died slowly, in pain, while Thomas sat beside her and held her hand. He had watched her leave him. He had watched her stop breathing, and he could not do anything to stop it. After she died, Thomas had lost the small house they owned. He had no money for rent. He had no family to help him. His brother had left the state years ago and never came back. His mother was dead. His father was dead. Mary was dead. And now his uncle, a man he had never really known, had left him a worthless cave in a cursed place. Thomas stood up. He wanted to leave. He wanted to walk out of this office and never come back to this town. He wanted to stop being alive. "There is more," the lawyer said quickly. "Your uncle left a letter. It is sealed. You must open it when you reach the cave." The lawyer handed Thomas an old envelope. It was brown and worn. The paper felt like it might fall apart in his hands. On the front, in handwriting that looked like it had been written by someone very old, were the words, "For Thomas, open this when you find what you are looking for." Thomas took the envelope and put it in his coat pocket. He walked out of the office without saying goodbye. Outside, the town of Dry Creek was dying. Dust blew down the empty street. A few old buildings stood like bones. A saloon that no one went to anymore. A general store with broken windows. A church with no congregation. The people in this town were all slowly leaving. They were all waiting for somewhere better. Thomas understood how they felt. He walked to the stable where he kept Copper. Copper was a wild Mustang that Thomas had tamed 15 years ago. He was the only living thing that Thomas truly loved now. Copper was dark reddish brown, the color of old blood. His coat was not shiny and new like it once was. Now it was faded and dull. The horse's ribs showed through his skin. You could count each bone if you wanted to. Copper's eyes were tired. They were the eyes of an old animal who had lived through many hard things. When Copper saw Thomas, the horse did not react with joy. He just turned his head slowly and looked at his master. "Hello, boy," Thomas said. His voice was quiet and sad. He reached out and touched Copper's neck. The horse's skin was warm, but there was no life in it. "It is just you and me now, old friend." Copper stepped closer to Thomas. The horse placed his head near Thomas's chest. This was not a greeting. This was two broken creatures recognizing each other's pain. Thomas had not eaten well in 3 months. He had not slept well. His clothes hung loose on his body. His face was thin and gray. His beard was long and dirty. His hands shook when he tried to do simple things. Copper was also not eating well. The horse had stopped looking for water. Both of them had stopped trying. Thomas went into the stable and found the old saddle. It was heavy. Everything was heavy now. He placed it on Copper's back. The horse did not move. The horse did not care where they were going. Thomas put the deed to the worthless land into his saddlebag. He had nothing else to pack. No extra clothes, no food, no water. Just a man and his dying horse and a map to nowhere. He climbed onto Copper's back. Every muscle in his body hurt. It was the kind of pain that comes from grief, from carrying something inside your chest that is too heavy to carry. The kind of pain that never goes away. The sun was very low now. It was sinking down behind the mountains like it was dying. The sky was orange and purple and red, the color of a wound. The wind was blowing harder, and it was cold. The desert was coming alive as the day died. Thomas looked back at the town of Dry Creek one last time. He saw nothing worth remembering. He turned Copper toward the desert. "Let's go, boy," he said. "Let's go see what nothing looks like." And they rode out of town, two living creatures who were barely alive, moving toward a worthless cave on cursed land, carrying an old letter that promised nothing under a dying sun, into a desert that did not care if they lived or died. Neither of them knew that everything was about to change. Neither of them knew that the real story was just beginning.
The desert had no mercy. Thomas and Copper rode for 3 hours. The sun had gone down completely now. The sky was black, and the stars were very bright. They were the only light in the world. But the stars did not warm anything. They only made the cold feel deeper. The wind came from the north. It was harsh and sharp. It cut through Thomas's thin jacket like tiny knives. He pulled the jacket tighter around his body, but it did not help. Cold is cold. When you're already dead inside, the outside cold just matches how you feel. Copper was tired, very tired. The horse walked slowly, step after step, like he was walking through water instead of sand. His breathing was heavy and rough. Thomas could hear it. He could feel it through the saddle. "Not much longer, boy," Thomas said to the horse. His voice was rough and weak. "We will find the cave soon." But Thomas did not know if they would find it. He did not have a map. He only had a direction, northeast into the old canyons. He only had hope, and hope had not worked for him in a long time. After another hour, the ground began to change. The flat desert gave way to rocks and small hills. The landscape became harder and uglier. Bones lay on the ground. Old bones, animal bones, maybe human bones too. No one came out here to die. Nothing good lived in this place. Only things that were already dead wanted to come here. Thomas saw the rocks first. They were tall and sharp, like teeth coming out of the earth's mouth. They were arranged in a strange way, like they had been placed by something that knew what it was doing. Between two of the biggest rocks, there was a shadow darker than the night around it. The cave. Thomas pulled on Copper's reins. The horse stopped. They were both very still now. The wind stopped too, like the world was holding its breath. This was it. This worthless place. This was where Thomas would live now. Or die. He was not sure which one would happen first. Thomas climbed down from Copper's back. His legs were stiff and weak. He almost fell. He had to hold on to Copper to stay standing. The horse turned his head and looked at Thomas with sad, tired eyes. Copper understood. The horse knew that this was the end of the ride. The cave entrance was smaller than Thomas expected. It was only about 6 feet tall and maybe 8 feet wide. It looked like a mouth that had been open for a very long time and had forgotten how to close. The darkness inside was complete. It was the kind of darkness that made you feel small and alone. It was the kind of darkness where nothing lived. Thomas tied Copper to a dead tree branch near the cave. The tree was white and brittle like old bone. Everything in this place looked dead. There was no water. There was no grass. There was no food. There was nothing. Thomas looked at Copper. The horse was standing very still with his head down. The horse's ribs were even more visible than before. You could see the shape of every bone. The horse's breathing was shallow. Sometimes horses could go without water for a few days, but not this far into the desert. Not with no food. "I'm sorry, boy," Thomas said. He reached out and touched Copper's neck. The hair was rough and dry. "I'm sorry I brought you here. I'm sorry I have nothing to give you." Copper did not move. The horse did not make any sound. The horse just stood in the darkness with his head down, waiting. Thomas pulled out his blanket from the saddlebag. He also found some hard bread wrapped in cloth. The bread was old and hard as a rock. He had bought it 3 days ago in town, before he learned about the inheritance. He had 2 pieces left. He broke 1 piece in half and tried to give it to Copper. The horse sniffed the bread and turned away. Copper would not eat. This was bad. When a horse stops eating, it means the horse has given up. Thomas sat down on the ground outside the cave, and Copper laid down beside him. The horse placed his head close to Thomas's leg. This was what they did now. They sat together in silence. They waited for things to get better or for things to end. Either way, at least they were not alone. Thomas thought about his wife, Mary. He thought about her every day. He thought about the morning she stopped waking up. He thought about the day they buried her in the cemetery on the hill. He thought about coming home to an empty house. He thought about having nowhere to sleep. He thought about being completely alone in the world. But he was not alone. He had Copper. Copper was his only reason to keep breathing. Copper was his only reason to wake up in the morning. Copper was his only reason to eat the hard bread and drink from dirty streams. But now even Copper was giving up. Thomas pulled his blanket around his shoulders. It was not enough to keep him warm, but it was better than nothing. He looked at the stars above. They were very bright and very far away. They were not meant for people like him. They were not meant for a man who had lost everything. They were not meant for a broken creature sitting outside a worthless cave in the middle of nowhere. Thomas closed his eyes. He thought about not opening them again. He thought about how easy it would be to just stay here with Copper under the stars and wait for the cold to take them both. It would not be so bad. It would be quiet. It would be peaceful. It would be the end of all the pain. Hours passed. Thomas did not sleep. He was too cold and too sad to sleep. He just sat there, holding his old blanket, listening to Copper breathe beside him. The night was very dark and very long. But then, something strange happened. Copper's ears moved. The horse's head came up slightly. Copper was looking at something, or listening to something. The horse's body became tense, like he heard a sound that Thomas could not hear. Thomas opened his eyes. "What is it, boy?" he asked. But Copper did not look at Thomas. The horse was looking deeper into the cave, into the darkness, into the blackness that should have been empty and dead. Copper's nostrils flared. Something inside that cave had made a sound. Something inside the worthless cave had moved. The night was very dark and very cold. Thomas sat outside the cave entrance with a thin blanket around his shoulders. The blanket was the same one he had worn to his wife Mary's funeral. It still smelled like her, like flowers and sadness. He had wrapped himself in it because he had nothing else to feel close to her. The cave was small and black. It looked like an open mouth waiting to swallow him. Thomas did not want to go inside. The lawyer had said the cave was empty. There was nothing in there, nothing to find, nothing to hope for. Copper lay on the ground beside Thomas. The horse's head rested near Thomas's leg. Thomas could feel the horse's ribs against his knee. Even through the blanket, he could feel how thin Copper had become, how close to giving up, how ready to stop living. Thomas was the same way. They were both waiting for nothing anymore. The desert around them was silent. No insects sang. No wind blew. No animals moved. The whole world seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for death to come. Thomas closed his eyes. He thought about Mary. He thought about her smile. He thought about the day she stopped smiling. He thought about the day she stopped breathing. He thought about being alone. The pain in his chest was so big that he could not breathe sometimes. Right now was one of those times. His breath came in short, shallow gasps, like drowning on dry land. Copper moved beside him. The horse stood up suddenly. His movement was sharp and fast, not like the slow, tired movements Copper had been making for months. This was different. Thomas opened his eyes. Copper was standing with his legs stiff and straight. The horse's entire body was tight, like a rope. His ears were pointed forward, very forward, toward the cave. His nostrils flared. His breathing was deep and quick. The horse's muscles were ready for something. "What is it, boy?" Thomas asked. His voice was rough. He had not spoken much in the past days. Copper did not move. The horse just stood there, looking into the cave darkness, looking deeper than a horse should be able to look, looking like he could see something that Thomas could not see. This was strange. Horses were afraid of caves. Horses were prey animals. They were afraid of dark places where they could not see. But Copper was not afraid. Copper looked like he was being called to something. Thomas stood up slowly. Every bone in his body hurt. He was weak for not eating. He was tired for not sleeping. But he stood up and watched his horse. Copper took one step toward the cave, then another step. The horse walked into the darkness like he knew exactly where he was going. "Copper, wait," Thomas called out. But the horse did not wait. The horse walked forward into the black, and soon Thomas could not see him anymore. Thomas grabbed the old lantern from his saddlebag. His hands were shaking. He lit the lantern with a match. The flame was small and weak, but it was light. It was something. He followed Copper into the cave. The cave opening was small, but inside, the space grew larger. Much larger. Thomas's footsteps made echoing sounds on the stone floor. The lantern light bounced off the walls and ceiling. And that was when Thomas saw it. The walls were glittering, not with ordinary rock, not with normal stone, with something that caught the light and threw it back like stars. The walls sparkled and shined. They looked like they were alive, like they were breathing light. Thomas raised the lantern higher. Veins of silver ran through the rock like frozen rivers, white and bright and beautiful. They caught the lantern flame and made it dance and shine. Thomas had never seen anything so beautiful in his life. Not even Mary's smile had been this beautiful, though he quickly pushed that thought away because comparing things to his wife felt wrong. Copper walked deeper into the cave. The horse's hooves made hollow sounds on the stone. The horse was not afraid. The horse was determined. The horse was moving towards something with the same purpose that had kept him alive all these months when it would have been easier to die. Thomas followed. The cave opened up even more. The walls got higher. The air got cooler. And deeper inside, in the light of the lantern, Thomas saw something else. Gold. Actual gold. Real gold. Veins of it running through the rock like lines of light, mixed with the silver. Pools of color that seemed impossible. That seemed like a dream that could not be real. Thomas stopped walking. His legs stopped moving. His mind stopped working. His breath stopped coming. This was not a worthless cave. This was not cursed land. This was a fortune. This was more money than Thomas had ever imagined. This was enough to change everything. Copper stood in front of the largest deposit of gold and minerals. The horse turned his head and looked back at Thomas. The horse's eyes were different now. They were bright. They were alive. They were full of meaning. Copper had known. Somehow, in a way that Thomas could not understand, Copper had known that this treasure was here. The horse had not been dying of sadness. The horse had been waiting for Thomas to be broken enough to come here, waiting for Thomas to be lost enough to stumble into something precious. Thomas fell to his knees. Tears came out of his eyes. Not tears of grief this time. Something different. Something that felt like breaking open and being born again at the same time. "How did you know?" Thomas whispered to his horse. "How did you know, boy?" Copper walked back to Thomas and placed his head on the man's shoulder. This was love. This was loyalty. This was a creature saying without words, "You are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are not worthless." Thomas put his arms around Copper's neck and cried. He cried for his wife. He cried for the pain. He cried for the months of darkness. But he also cried for this moment, this impossible moment where the world had shifted, where nothing would ever be the same again. "We're going to be okay," Thomas said to his horse. "We're going to be okay now." Copper nickered softly, a sound like agreement, a sound like hope. In the light of the old lantern, in a cave that had been hidden for decades, a broken cowboy and a dying horse stood together and discovered that they had been saved. Not by money, not by gold, but by each other, by refusing to give up when everything told them to give up, by finding each other in the darkness, by trusting when there was nothing left to trust. The treasure in the cave was not the most valuable thing they had discovered that night. The most valuable thing was the fact that they had survived long enough to find it. 2 weeks had passed since Thomas found the treasure. 2 weeks since Copper led him into the darkness and showed him the fortune hidden in the stone walls. 2 weeks since the world changed. Thomas sat in Mr. Price's office again. The same cold, sad room. The same yellow light coming through the window. But everything was different now. The experts had come to the cave. They had looked at the minerals and the gold and the silver. They had tested the rocks and written numbers on papers. They had said words that Thomas did not understand, words about purity and weight and value. When they were done, they gave him a number. The cave was worth millions, millions of dollars. Enough money to change not just one life, but many lives. Enough money to matter. Enough money to save. Mr. Price sat across from him now, holding papers. The papers were thick. They were filled with numbers and words, and things that meant Thomas could be rich, could have a house, could have food, could stop being broken. But before Thomas signed anything, he wanted to know something. "My uncle," Thomas said slowly. "How long did he own the land?" Mr. Price looked through his papers. He moved them around like he was looking for something. "According to the records," Mr. Price said, "your uncle bought this land 52 years ago. A very long time. He lived in a small house on the property. He had a simple life. 52 years. That was almost a whole lifetime. Did he ever try to sell the land?" Thomas asked. "No," Mr. Price said. "Never. Many people try to buy it from him. Wealthy people. Businessmen. He always refused. He told them it was not for sale. He told them that nothing on that land was for sale." Thomas felt something cold in his stomach. Why would he keep it? Thomas asked. If he knew there was treasure in the cave, why did he not use it? Why did he not become rich? Mr. Price adjusted his glasses. He looked uncomfortable. "That," Mr. Price said, "I do not know. But there is something else. Your uncle left a letter. Sealed. The lawyer before me gave me instructions to give it to you only after you had seen the cave, after you had discovered what was inside." Mr. Price pulled out the old brown envelope, the same one Thomas had put in his pocket the first day. Thomas had kept it close to him. He had not opened it. He had been waiting for the right moment. This was the moment. Thomas took the envelope with shaking hands. "Open it," Mr. Price said. "I think you will understand many things." Thomas opened the envelope very carefully. The paper was old and fragile. It felt like it might break. Inside was a letter written in the same old handwriting he had seen on the envelope. Thomas began to read. "Thomas, if you are reading this, you have found the cave. You have discovered the gold and the silver hidden in the stone. And maybe, just maybe, you have understood why I left it for you instead of taking it for myself. My name is William. I was your uncle. We never met. But I know about you. I have watched your life from a distance. I saw you when you were young. I saw you grow up. I saw you marry Mary. I saw you become a man. And I saw your pain. 52 years ago, I found this cave. I was a young man then. I had nothing. I had no family. I had no love. I was alone in the world, just like you are alone now. I came to this desert because I wanted to die. I wanted to disappear. I did not think my life had any value. Then I found the cave. I found the gold. I found the silver. I found a fortune. And I stood in that darkness and cried, just like you probably cried, Thomas. But I did not take the gold. I left it there. Why? Because I understood something that took me my whole life to learn. Gold does not make a broken person whole. Money does not heal a broken heart. Wealth does not give you a reason to live. What gives you a reason to live is having someone who loves you, having something to care for, having a purpose that goes beyond yourself. I left the cave as it was for 52 years because I was waiting for someone broken enough to understand its real value. Not the gold, not the money, but the lesson. You came to this cave because you had nothing left. Your wife is gone. Your family is gone. You were ready to give up. And maybe that horse of yours was ready to give up too. But the horse did not give up. The horse led you to the treasure, not because the horse wanted gold. The horse led you because the horse loved you. The horse refused to let you die. That is the real treasure, Thomas. Now you will be rich. You will have money. You will have everything you thought you wanted. But I want you to promise me something. Promise me that you will not forget why you survived. You survived because of love. You survived because a creature trusted you. Because a horse refused to let go. Use the money to help other broken things. Use the money to save other creatures that the world has forgotten. Use the money to build a place where things that are broken can become whole again. Not because they deserve it, but because love demands it. Your wife Mary is gone from your eyes. But she is not really gone, Thomas. She is in every sunrise. She is in every moment you choose to live instead of die. She is in the fact that you kept moving forward even when moving forward hurt. The horse knew. Animals always know when someone loves them. Animals always know when they're worth saving. Your horse saw something in you worth saving, and the horse saved you. Now save others. The letter I am writing to you now will be read by you in darkness or in light, in sorrow or in joy. But whenever you read it, I want you to know this. You're not worthless. You never were. You were just waiting for something to show you your value. That something was love. That something was a horse. That something was surviving long enough to find treasure in the darkness. Go be worthy of that horse, Thomas. Go be worthy of Mary's memory. Go be worthy of the second chance you have been given. With love from a man you never knew. Your Uncle William. Thomas could not see the words anymore. Tears covered his face. His hand shook so badly that he almost dropped the letter. He read the words again and again. You're not worthless. You were just waiting for something to show you your value. His uncle had waited 52 years. 52 years to give this fortune to someone who needed to understand that treasure was not about gold. That survival was about love. Thomas understood now. Everything made sense now. The worthless inheritance. The cursed land. The empty cave that was not empty. The horse that would not give up. All of it had been a test. All of it had been designed by his uncle, a man he had never met, to teach him the most important lesson of his life. You survive because someone loves you. And when you survive, you must give that love forward. Thomas folded the letter very carefully and put it back in the envelope. I want to build something, Thomas said to Mr. Price. What do you want to build? The lawyer asked. A place, Thomas said, where broken things can become whole, where forgotten horses can be saved, where people like me can remember that they are not alone. Mr. Price nodded slowly, like he understood, like he had been waiting for Thomas to say these words. Your uncle, Mr. Price said, would have liked that very much. 6 months had passed. The land that was once cursed and dead had become green and alive. Grass grew where nothing had grown before. Water ran where only dust had been. Trees that had been broken were growing strong again. And horses, so many horses, walked across the fields freely, running and playing and living. Thomas stood on the porch of his new house. It was a simple house made of wood and stone. It was not fancy. He did not want fancy. He wanted to be a place where broken things felt safe. The house looked out over the ranch. And on this ranch, there were 37 horses. All of them had been abandoned. All of them had been forgotten. All of them had been left to die by people who did not care. But now they were here. Now they were home. Thomas had used the money from the cave to build this place. He had hired people to help him. He had built fences and barns and shelters. He had dug wells so there would always be water. He had planted fields so there would always be food. He had created a sanctuary, a place where the world's broken creatures could become whole again, just like he had become whole again. Copper came walking toward the house. The horse was transformed. His coat now shined like real copper in the sunlight. His ribs were no longer showing. His eyes were bright and alive. His movement was strong and sure. Copper was no longer a dying animal. Copper was alive again. Copper was beautiful again. Thomas walked down the porch steps and waited for his old friend. When Copper reached him, the horse placed his head on Thomas's chest. This was their greeting now. This was how they said hello every morning. This was how they reminded each other that they were still together, still alive, still loved. "Good morning, boy," Thomas said, running his hand down Copper's neck. "Another day, another chance." Copper nickered softly. The sound was different now. Not tired, not sad, but full of life and hope and meaning. Later that morning, a woman came to the ranch. Her name was Sarah. She was a journalist, someone who wrote stories for newspapers. She had come to write about Thomas and the sanctuary he had built. She had heard the story from people in the town. They had told her about the grieving cowboy, about the worthless inheritance, about the horse that saved his life. Thomas walked with her around the ranch. "Why did you do this?" Sarah asked him. "You could have kept all the money. You could have lived anywhere. You could have had anything." Thomas looked out at the horses in the fields. He watched them run and play. He watched them drink from the clean water. He watched them eat fresh grass. He watched them live. "Because," Thomas said slowly, "my horse saved my life. And my uncle taught me that when someone saves your life, you have to save others' lives too." Sarah wrote this down in her notebook. "Tell me about your uncle," she said. Thomas told her the story. He told her about the letter. He told her about the cave. He told her about the 52 years his uncle had waited. He told her about the wisdom his uncle had shared. When Thomas finished, Sarah had tears in her eyes. "That is the most beautiful story I have ever heard," she said. "It is not just my story," Thomas said. "It is my uncle's story. It is my wife's story. It is Coppa's story. It is all of these stories becoming one story. A story about survival, about love, about refusing to give up." That evening, Thomas sat where he always sat. He sat outside the main barn, watching the sunset. The sky turned orange and purple and red, the same colors it had turned the night he rode toward the cave with Copper. But everything was different now. An old horse came and sat beside him. This was a horse named Blue. Blue had been abandoned by a farmer who said he was too old to work anymore. Blue's legs were stiff. Blue's back was bent from years of hard work. But Blue's eyes still had kindness in them. Thomas put his hand on Blue's shoulder. "You made it too," he whispered. "You survived. You are safe now." Blue placed his head near Thomas's chest, just like Copper did. This was what Thomas had learned. This was what his uncle had known. This was what the treasure in the cave had really been teaching. When you are broken and another broken thing loves you, you both become whole. As the sun went down, Thomas walked to a place on the ranch that was special to him. It was a small hill with a big tree. Under the tree, Thomas had placed 2 stones. One stone had his wife's name on it, Mary, beloved, never forgotten. The other stone had his uncle's name, William, a generous spirit, a teacher of truth. Thomas sat between these 2 stones. "I did what you asked," he said to the uncle he had never met. "I am helping the broken things. I am saving the forgotten creatures. I am being worthy of what you gave me." Then he spoke to his wife. "I miss you every day, Mary, but I am not alone anymore. You were right when you told me that love is the strongest thing in the world. I understand it now. I feel it. I see it in these horses. I see it in Copper. I see it in myself." The wind blew gently through the tree. The leaves made a sound like whispers, like approval, like the whole universe agreeing that he had finally understood. That night, Thomas lay in his bed. Copper was sleeping in the barn next to him. Through the open window, Thomas could hear the sounds of the other horses. He could hear them breathing. He could hear them moving. He could hear them living. He was not alone anymore. He had not been alone since he rode toward that cave with nothing. He had always been loved. He just had to be broken enough to understand it. 6 months became 1 year. The ranch grew bigger. More horses came. More people came to help. More stories of rescue and healing happened every single day. One day, Thomas stood on the same hill where his wife and uncle were remembered. A photographer was taking pictures. Thomas and Copper stood together, looking out at the ranch, at all the horses running free, at all the broken things that had become whole. The photograph would be published in magazines. It would be shared across the country. It would tell Thomas's story to thousands of people who had never met him. But Thomas did not care about being famous. He cared about the fact that every horse on this ranch had been saved. He cared about the fact that Copper was healthy and strong. He cared about the fact that he had found a reason to live. He cared about being worthy of the love that had saved him. On a quiet evening, as the sun set over the ranch one more time, Thomas stood with Copper and spoke words that would echo in the hearts of all who heard them. When I came to that cave, I was looking for treasure. I thought treasure was gold. I thought treasure was money. I thought treasure could fix what was broken inside me. He paused and looked at Copper. But the real treasure was always here. The real treasure was the refusal to give up. The real treasure was a horse that loved me even when I did not love myself. The real treasure was understanding that being broken is not the end of the story. It is the beginning. Thomas placed his forehead against Copper's forehead, their favorite way of showing love. The cave did not save me, he whispered. Love saved me, and now I save others. This is the only treasure that matters. This is the only thing worth living for. As darkness fell over the ranch, all the horses were safe. All the horses had shelter and food and water and care. All the horses had a home. And Thomas, the grieving cowboy who had inherited a worthless cave, had finally inherited something real. A reason to live, a purpose to pursue, a legacy to leave behind. Not built on gold, built on love. The end.